The Grand Saloon has it all. A family-owned and operated world-famous business that has been a Clifton, New Jersey staple since 1974. The staff always makes you feel at home with a friendly greeting and a warm smile. You'll never feel like a stranger here. The Grand Saloon offers that personal touch that you won't see in any corporate-run establishment. With elevated comfort food and weekly specials, there is always something to meet even the most discerning palate. Stop by for a drink to find some of the most friendly and genuine people sitting right alongside of you. The Grand Saloon builds a fun and engaging atmosphere with events like Trivia Mondays, Karaoke Saturdays, and open mics on Sundays. Friday and Saturday nights feature great live music from some of the area's most talented local bands that play something for everybody's tastes. Located at 940 Van Houten Avenue in Clifton, New Jersey, and open from 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. They always hang out a little later on the weekends. Go to their website to find out more by visiting grandsaloon.com. That's GRANDESALOON.com. We always look forward to seeing you at the Grand Saloon, where there's always great atmosphere, good times, good people, and great food. Welcome to the Suffering Podcast. Each week we walk you through how suffering is the way to sustainable success and the path to greatness. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many more. Visit thesufferingpodcast.com for complete details. Please subscribe and like to get our latest episodes as soon as they drop. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for exclusive content. Please comment. We may read your comments on future shows or even reach out to you for a future guest appearance. Let's embrace how suffering forges bonds that last forever, showing we are never alone. So get ready, sit down, and strap in.
Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain. Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down and strap in. This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain. This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Dented Development Project is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to assist first responders and their families repair dents caused by suffering. Help us support the ones who take care of us selflessly. Dented things can still operate, but may not be as pretty as they once were. Make a difference and go to denteddevelopmentproject.com to get involved today. Our heroes need our help. All new Suffering Podcast gear is here. The show depends heavily on our supporters to get the word out. Let people know that suffering is a team sport and no one is alone in their struggles. Wearing the Suffering Podcast merchandise accomplishes that goal. Check out our store at thesufferingpodcast.com or check our show notes for the link. Your support and love means everything to us. Did you ever get invited to a party by yourself where you knew nobody? Everything and everyone around you is foreign. You know you're going to feel out of place, like you don't belong. Now, did you go? If you did go, how did it feel? When we enter into situations all alone, without anything familiar, it sparks an instinctual anxiety. A normal reaction to stepping outside your comfort zone is to be uneasy. You can put on a brave face and bear the uncomfortableness, or you can shy away and hide in a corner, hoping nobody will see you. The odd thing about a comfort zone is that we must go through stresses and suffering in order to grow. We've all done it from time to time, so the question remains, how far outside of your comfort zone are you willing to go? I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Falace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Kattia Roman to discuss the suffering of an immigrant. Kattia can attest firsthand to the difficulties of starting a new life in a strange country. Kattia, welcome. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Before we get into it,
I know this might be your first time doing a podcast, so just feel comfortable and sit back, relax. And...
I can say that I may have dabbled a bit a couple of times.
Little backstory on Kattia. Kattia's husband, Andrew, is the owner of A&J Media, at which we film another podcast at. I met Kattia through there, and she's the first one that put makeup on us, Mike.
I
Yeah,
did,
no kidding.
I did.
We got pictures of it too.
Yeah.
But you know, you guys were not shiny. during
You know
that
what? That's why I
episode.
didn't shave my head today because I didn't want the glow.
Well,
I
always
thought maybe you would have came in with your.
I thought about it. I was packing my stuff, and I'm like, "Ooh, I'm gonna my makeup," and I was like, "Oh no, it's not camera. It's not."
Well, that was
camera."
always one of the things that bothered me when I go on those other shows. It's you do these 2.5, 3 hour shows. By the hour 2, you're just glowing. It's difficult to look me on a good day. Put some shine on me, and it's really difficult.
I think that, the moment men realize how powerful something as simple as powder is, it will really change their whole life. Even just filters for,
I don't know about it
pictures.
changed my life.
It will. It will, because it will make a big difference on how you look on camera. And when you can see a picture of yourself that you don't hate, it makes a big difference on your self-esteem.
It's a whole other show talking about the suffering of putting makeup on men.
The suffering of men without makeup.
Yeah.
If you're ugly, you're ugly, and there's no way to hide it. Oh, no, wait, men grow beards, right? That's what you guys
That's
do?
how we hide everything.
It's like a mask for him.
Well,
He's trying to prove he's a man. Look, I have a beard. I'm a man.
No, but like if you have a weak chin and you grow a beard, your whole face looks different.
Well, Mike has a weak chin, and he doesn't grow a beard because he can't. It looks like it's like pubic hairs.
I haven't reached puberty yet. I'm only 56.
You can literally have beard hair implanted now. So,
Just straight on.
I hate hair. I don't want to grow it. The only reason I have this little scruff is because I'm lazy.
So what do you do when the guy's got a lot of hair that you're with?
Just push it right aside.
Oh, okay. All right. So before we get into any of the fun here, let's get into this week's social media question, and it comes from Bridget. It says, have you ever come across any effective ways to forgive people? Kattia, you're our guest today. We all have friends in our life that we have disagreements with and arguments. How do you get through that? Or can you get through that?
So I am actually very different than most people in that sense. The first 5 years of my life, I was nonverbal, so I could not communicate effectively with people around me. And because of that, I have the memories of it, of people talking to me and me not being able to communicate. Because of that, I spent most of my 5 first years of my life just really trying to understand the world around me. So normally when things happen to me or people do things to me, I am able to kind of see why they did it. And in many ways, understanding why they did it, putting yourself in their shoes really makes you be able to forgive them and really makes you being able to see why they did it. Because a lot of times when people do things, it's not about you. It's a reaction to their pain. It's a reaction to their trauma. So if you could put yourself in those shoes, then it will make you understand, oh, this person did this because they were abandoned. They have an abandonment wound. It was because they have certain levels of trauma. So understanding where that person came from and who the person is, it's the easiest way for you to forgive them.
Well, it's really looking at things from an elevated position. If you think of a soldier on a battlefield, a soldier down in the trenches fighting the war cannot figure out why the bosses are telling him to go right, left, or center. The boss that's sitting way up on the hill, especially in the old days during like the Civil War, say, the generals would stay up on a hill because they're looking at the battlefield from an elevated position. They can see the entire picture. And that sounds like what you're doing. Your method of forgiveness for people is you're stepping back, you're coming from an elevated position, you're trying to look at the big picture. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think, looking at the big picture and just when somebody hurts us, a lot of times it really is about the way we take it. Even if they didn't mean to hurt us, it may have to do with how you feel or how a situation made you feel. And sometimes the person's not even aware that they hurt you necessarily or didn't do it purposely, right? So I think just really acknowledging, hey, we're human and you're gonna make mistakes. And I think throughout my life, I've learned to just view everything as a lesson because every painful situation that I have been through in my life has taught me something. When that happens, I think, and you learn to just be like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? Then it's no longer about the other person. It's about you and how you can change as a person and your growth. Because a lot of times these very painful situations are really about helping us grow into the person you're supposed to be or the person that you need to be for whatever your journey in this life is.
That's a very enlightened perspective. And I didn't expect that from a Costa Rican because Costa Ricans, we all know, don't have that type of perspective. Of course, I'm just kidding.
First of all, we are like the most peaceful people on earth, or like the nicest people on earth. Not so much me, because I think I've spent like 20-something years here, so I think I'm more Americanized.
You've been Americanized.
Yeah.
Exactly.
People are always like, oh, Costa Ricans are the happiest people in the world. I'm like, no, not me.
in Americanized, you mean you've adopted our assholeism.
Yeah, so like
She's got a lot of New Jersey in her now.
Wait, I didn't just come to America. I came to New Jersey, which I think it's really... But even when I go somewhere as simple as Florida, I'm like, why are you walking so slow in front of me? I just don't understand the level of speed that's used.
The East.
Yeah.
So if you go anywhere else in the country, that's not true.
But even when I went to Costa Rica on vacation, we were at the beach. We were coming back. I had a mental plan. We were coming back to our house in Costa Rica. My mom goes, oh, there's this guy that built a house under a rock. Like, he's just been carving into a giant rock thing for, 20-something years. It's been his dream passion. Do you want to go see it? And I'm like, no. Why? And she's like, well, why not? And I'm like, I want to get home. And she's like, well, you're on vacation. What do you have to do back to the house?
Vacation stuff.
I'm like, I just want to get home. And she's like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. You're going to go into like underground to this house building a rock. And I'm like, but I don't want to. Because in my mind, in New Jersey, especially here, I think we're built on like, this is my schedule.
Yep.
And if we
Very regimented.
derive from the schedule, it could set off your entire, at the time you're picking up the kids, at the time that you're going grocery shopping, 5 minutes of being in traffic can equal you being late, not cooking dinner.
Well, hypertension is rampant in the Northeast because of that schedule type of thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, Kev. I'm sure you've seen it as a police officer. You have a construction detail or something. Even in your job now, you have a construction detail and you're detouring people.
Mm-hmm.
And these people get so mad. I have to go this way.
Yep.
They're so set in their ways. I always said, like,
they only know one way home.
If you detour someone, they're going to be late for dinner next Thursday because their whole week schedule's thrown off.
Well, what it does, honestly...
Well, can we discuss the construction on Route 46?
No.
And why is it still going?
We have 1 hour.
Route 3 and 46,
So
that junction there.
It's terrible.
That's been under construction since I moved up here.
I got lost going to my kid's pediatrician because of it. And I just had to like pull over and like, where the F am I? And then I was just yelling into the phone because my husband called me and I'm like, and this mother effers, how is this not done? It's been forever.
Because it's a state job. So.
It is.
It's job security is what it is.
Listen, you were to get some Costa Ricans on that construction, it had already been done.
And it
would be done in a week.
Yeah, it would be done in a week.
It would cost like $3 too.
Yeah, really. But no, we did.
I am going to bring out every little stereotype. Mike, what do you think? You've ever found something effective to forgive people?
You know what? I mean, I'm not the type of person that holds a grudge. Life's too short to hold grudges I'm a firm believer in if someone's trying to put you down, that means you're higher than them. A lot of times people put you down, it's because of their own insecurities. I just generally brush it off. I mean, there's still things that affect me and bother me, but I don't let things get to me anymore.
When it gets to a point with me where I am fed up, I have this weird thing where I don't want toxic people in my life, and I just shut you off.
Yeah, it's like a shutdown.
I do. I just turn off the light switch, and there's nothing. If that happens, because I care for people very deeply, and when you're my friend, and I'm very invested in your life.
Well, we found out you do have a big heart.
Yeah. You have a heart?
I do.
When? What episode was that? What episode was it that we found out that he has a heart?
I was going to go see The Wizard to get one put in. With Dorothy, but unfortunately I don't need to do that because I found out the other night.
I feel like if we were to pull up some of his ex-girlfriends when he was younger, they would say that he does not have a heart.
No. I think they would say I honestly think they would say the opposite.
Oh, he's lying.
That's not the only thing they'd say about it. A big heart is the only big thing on him. He's Irish.
I have recently come across this with forgiving people. One of our good friends was Mike DePalma. We developed our nonprofit with him, and Mike and I had a falling out, which, we'll get into another way. And it was one of those things where it was a bad fallout, and I cut that switch off. Unfortunately, there's no resolution with that. So you bottle that stuff up, and it's not a good thing. This is my new way of thinking. Recently, through the help of Mike, Mike DePalma and I have recently reconnected. And you know what was the best feeling in the world? What the first phone call we had together, he started going on, look, I'm sorry about what happened. I said, Mike, it's done. It's done. I didn't want to hear that, but that's all I needed to hear. It's done. And then it was, let's move on. You know, we became invested in each other's lives very deeply, from his kids and his retirement.
And his helping us start up Dented Development Project.
Right. So that shutoff left a big void in my life, and it was really nice to hear from him. If I had to do it again, as far as forgiveness goes, I'd like to follow that path, because it was the path of least resistance. It was the path of least pain, and it felt really good to reconnect.
You know, there's so much drama and trauma in life. Do you really have to worry about like some stupid argument you had with someone and how someone disrespect? As guys, we take it personally, but in the long run, what's it
As
really
women,
worth?
we just plan revenge.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, women will quiet down.
Yeah.
So that's the worst thing in the world, when somebody's quiet.
I think because of my trauma responses, which I've really worked on for the last 2 years of my life to really kind of figure out what makes me tick, which I think is very important. I think every adult kind of has to do it. I've learned that I do too. Like, if I will you'll see me just like go plain face, like no reaction whatsoever.
That's when I'm leaving.
You know, and even my husband, he has the tendency of kind of pulling away when there's an argument where...
He's such a nice guy, though. I don't get it.
Oh my God, my husband is such a nice guy.
He is.
No, so the thing about my
Thank God
husband
there's not
is,
cameras in here.
well, I say that to him all the time. I
call him up. I'm like, hey, Drew, what's going on? Talk to me, Kevin. That's what he does.
Yeah. And my husband is amazing. And you know, he will go through like the desert for you. Meanwhile, I'm like, can I get water? And he's like, you got it. You got it. And I'm like...
He identifies you as a strong woman.
Which is great. But sometimes I don't want to be a strong woman. And that's okay. Just like sometimes he may not want to be a strong man. Like, he was sick all week. I was there making garlic tea because I'm old school Costa Rican. So I was like, you're coughing. Here's some garlic tea.
Garlic tea.
No, you don't taste it the way, you know, because you could just add lemon and stuff like that. But he had a really bad cough. He was on antibiotics. He was on all this medication. I'm like, if I don't stay home and baby you for the next 4 days, you're not going to be ready to record next week.
I was going to say that. Is he one of those guys who, when he gets sick, he's just
he's
like,
the worst.
Oh,
He's
can
the
you
worst.
get me this?
So it's a different type of pain. So a guy can go out in the middle of a war zone and fight, and they'll get shot, and they'll keep going. And we've seen this over and over again. And I'm not saying this is not a knock on women or anything, but when a guy gets sick, that's it. It's game over. But a woman can push through that stuff. But a woman can't do the same thing on a battlefield that a man can do. I'm going to be very sexist when
I have heard certain comments you guys have made, like, you know, how a kidney stone is equal to giving birth. So yeah, I get it.
I agree.
You guys are more of a...
I agree. I totally agree with that one. Because again, Kattia, I've said this to you in the past. My wife gave birth to 2 children, and I didn't feel a thing. We have taken such an odd turn. We went, Bridget, we answered your question, but you got some bonus.
But we
material.
went off on that. You know, the thing I say about childbirth, though, is and listen, God bless women for doing it. I got no...
It's one place coming out of you and I, buddy, and the birth rate would be down to like 1 per 1 million.
But listen, I say all the time, the baby came out of me first, and it didn't hurt at all.
I'm sure you had some level of fun to it. And if you worked really hard, I'm sure she enjoyed it too. However... You know,
God,
I mean,
where did we go with this?
Oh, this is.
But it is,
field.
you know, a quite painful experience. I can attest. I'm sure you guys were perfectly fine after your wives gave birth.
I was making jokes during the whole thing. It was great.
Oh my God, Andrew was filling out paperwork, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm filling this paperwork out." I'm like, "But we have a day after the baby's born. Like, what?"
I asked the nurse if it was okay if I left the room to go get the father. When my wife was in labor, which I thought was freaking hilarious. But apparently my wife, who was in labor, didn't think it was as funny as I did.
You're lucky she couldn't get, you know, because they basically strap you to a bed and you can't really get up. Right, so you're lucky she didn't get up and punch you. Because I would have disconnected the machines. You have seen that machine that you're connected to that takes the fetal beat and it was just flown through your...
So anyway, Bridget,
that's how you forgive somebody. And
thank you so much for sending that question. And
if you're not married and don't have kids, if you do get married and are gonna have a kid, please let your husband know not to make jokes during childbirth so he doesn't die. And you know that's what we got for you.
Bridget, thank you very much. Your question wasn't about childbirth, but somehow we turned it into it.
We also got into war somehow. So I'm not even gonna, you guys keep acting like I took it there, but you guys started with war and how you guys are more powerful and and your gun is bigger than his gun. I can't.
Thank you so much for sending those questions in. Keep sending them in. We'll try to get them on the air.
Do we even have to go further?
No,
we
I
can
think
just wrap this up.
I think we may have to change the name of this. But Kattia, what I would like for you to tell the audience, I just want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
I am one out of 7 kids. I was born in the beautiful country of Costa Rica.
Your poor mother.
Yes. We are 6 daughters, 1 son.
Oh, your poor
Poor
father.
son.
I was my father's 5th disappointment, to the point where when he tells the story of my birth, he goes, and then Kattia was born, and I went to a coffee farm, and I prayed to God and said, can I please have a son now? That was my father's dream, because back in Costa Rica at that time, they really didn't do, ultrasounds. So you didn't know what you were having. So the whole 9 months, you have the father hoping for a son, because that's who's going to carry your name. And then, so I was born. That was a bit of a... And I was saying that to my dad, I'm like, so I was a disappointment? He's like, anybody after your oldest sister was a disappointment, okay? We respect teen boys. And then my parents came to America when I was 8 years old. The plan was for my father to come in, work.
They came without you?
Yes. They left us for a year with my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, the 3 youngest ones, because my baby sister was born here, so she wasn't there at the time. My father was trying to transition from coffee farms to a food store, having a store, because in his mind, he has daughters and he doesn't want us working the coffee farms 12 hours a day. So I think in many ways, the reason he made that decision was like, well, if I have a food store, this is something that girls can do and not injure themselves.
Well, it's not like start up a family construction business.
It's not, coffee. If you don't have sons and you have so much land in coffee farms and you continue to have daughters, you're going to have to make a different plan for yourself than what you had. My father opened up the store, and the loans of the store were getting to the point where we could lose our coffee farms. So now he was, at the point where he could lose everything. So my sister had gotten married a year before, came to America. They said, hey, come for a year, work, pay off everything, and then just go back home. So the original plan was never for us to come to America. When they got here, it came my oldest sister. I'm just going to number them. Number 1 came. Number 2 was already married. Number 3 came. My mom and my father came. Once they got here, my oldest sister was engaged probably within 2 months of being in America.
But she found a nice American guy.
Well, no, she actually found my sister's number 2's husband's best friend. Had already seen pictures of her. He was there the day they arrived at 8 a.m. Because even to travel, you have to have a certain amount of cash with you, because you're coming as a tourist. You need to have a large amount of cash to show immigration when you walk in. So he had lent my father the money. So he knew he wanted my sister. He had seen her in pictures.
It's called a dowry.
Yeah. So pretty much, they arrived, I think, at midnight, and then the next morning, 8 a.m., he was knocking on the door to pick up his money. That was the first time my sister saw him. What
this guy did is a classic move. It's called the leave behind.
Okay.
It really is. It's called the leave behind. So let's say you go out to dinner with a lady. You go back to her place, not for anything, just to say goodbye. That's all you do. And then you take something out of your pocket, like, your hat or something that's going to bring you back. So you call up the next day, hey, listen, I think I left my hat there. It's called the leave behind.
So women do the same thing when we spend the night at a guy's house, and we just leave earrings in random places where any other girl can see it. So I'm going to have you're going to message me and say, hey, I found your earring, or you're going to be messaging 10 other girls and saying, hey, I found your earring.
It's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and women do it all the time.
Yeah.
We will leave random things like, I'm in my husband's car, hair.
Shedding.
That's kind of like a dog pees around there.
Mark their territory.
Marking our territory. Yeah. I'm going to leave mine in your car.
If you lift your leg in my house, we are going to fight. Okay? We're going to fight.
But that is a very...
She did ask to use the restroom before she got in. I didn't hear the door close.
All over the walls. All over the walls.
But it is, we leave something behind because we want that person to remember us.
But that's what this guy did to your sister. He
No,
made
literally-
himself essential.
He bought himself a wife. That's what he did, okay? He was like, I saw the sisters. I want this one. I will make sure this one comes to America, and I'm going to be ready. I mean, my sister did not date anybody else because they were like, I think within 2 weeks of her being here, he was proposing marriage already. So he was mentally ready and saying, this is
Lock
the
it
woman.
down.
Yeah. Like she did not have. So within less than a year of them being here, my parents had to pay for an American wedding. Which was not.
And did you move to New Jersey first?
Yes, we came.
So you had to pay for a New Jersey wedding.
Yeah,
That's
so we
different.
came from from Costa Rica to Wayne, New Jersey at the time, 24 years ago. So yeah. Now after my parents have been here for a year, my father said, listen, if my kids speak English, they'll have so much more opportunities back home. So he said, I'm going to bring the kids for a year. I'm going to make sure they learn English in a year. No pressure, guys. And then we'll all just kind of leave. So we came here a year after my parents arrived. And my father, we used to go to school day. Then my father, I don't know if you guys ever heard like Inglés sin barreras, which was like this like way to learn English. And it was like all these tapes. And my father used to sit us in front of the TV and make us watch that for 3 hours after we came from school. Like nonstop. Because
initially how I learned Spanish, I used to watch Telemundo.
Do you watch it for the Weather Girls?
Maybe.
Did you ever watch their like New Year's Eve specials?
Oh, they're hilarious.
Oh, they're great.
So what got
Don't
me
understand a word they're saying, but I love it.
what got me hooked on Telemundo is they had this variety show, and they brought out this guy. As a matter of fact, he's the littlest person in the world. He was in. You ever see The Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando?
Yeah.
He was the little guy next to him, and this guy's dancing around. I mean, it was hilarious. And as if it wasn't degrading enough, the host takes this guy and sits him on his knee.
Like a puppet.
And I'll never forget that. And I've been a Telemundo fan since that day. So in Wayne, New Jersey, you first came here, did you know any English?
No, I did not speak any English. And
You said you were nonverbal too.
yeah, so I couldn't speak till the age of 5. So then I finally learned Spanish. So I was, I think, in second grade. I still had a bit of a speech impediment, but, I could communicate better. And then, so it had been basically 2-3 years that I could communicate effectively with the rest of the world. And then I was brought to the United States to learn a whole new language.
Which English, by far, I can see how it's the hardest language to learn.
It
Because there's
is.
no rules.
No, and there's a lot of words that are spelled the same
Yeah.
and mean different
And
things
they
and
sound
are
the same,
pronounced different.
like, okay, so if I say the number 3 or tree, it sounds the same.
You're right.
Well, tree is
or-
Italian for three.
Yeah.
Or if I say,
1, 2, 3.
Tree.
or if I say bitch or beach, it sounds the same.
I'm going to the bitch.
Or if I
where's
say
she at?
certain words to this day, like yogurt, or junkies, because those are just
Big jankies.
Jinkies.
the junkies. Or I think when I was a waitress, there's this stupid beer, like jingling.
Yingling.
Jingling. And every time I
That's a Dutch beer, right? It's Dutch?
You know, that's made in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know, but
I thought it was like a Chinese beer.
But
No, I
I
think
would
it's
always
Dutch.
go up to my boss and say, can I have a jingling? He's like, isn't that how you got in trouble in the first place? And I'm like, I can't. Can I just have the effing beer, okay? But it's certain words that I still to this day cannot pronounce properly.
But you know what though? True Americans, and I'm telling you this from somebody who I love this country to death, and somebody who's a true American. Somebody like you who comes to this country and embraces everything, all the good and all the bad. That's what real Americans want, because at one point our ancestors were the same. When my ancestors came over, especially the ones from Ireland, it was during a time when Irish were not real popular in this country. So I fully understand people not being looked at favorably, especially immigrants, but they embraced the society, they embraced the culture. They did speak. Like I remember my grandfather and his brothers speaking the language at home because they were saying something amongst each other they didn't want me to hear.
Yeah, usually you're speaking a different language around your kids, so they don't understand.
That's how I knew all Italian curse words.
Right. Well,
My grandparents, when they started arguing,
I knew the Gaelic curse words. That's what I did. I knew the Gaelic curse words. But I've lost it since then. It sounds like that's what your father wanted you to learn English because he realized that in this country there's the opportunity.
Yeah, so my father pushed really, my father has a third grade education and has dyslexia. So he himself was never able to he can communicate with you and speak certain words, but he cannot read or write it.
Well, if he's dyslexic, he's actually got a 6th grade education.
When your parents came here, did they speak any English?
No, they
So
did
your
not.
father came here only speaking Spanish, 3rd grade education, and dyslexic.
Yeah. So,
Did he have cerebral palsy too? Let's add one more adjective in there.
no, I mean,
How many legs did he have?
no, and he was like, the son of an alcoholic man. So my father built himself from scratch, which is something that I always saw. And then he came with 2 daughters. And at the time in Costa Rica, they would tell him, you're insane. You should just go by yourself, work, and then come back. And my mom said, everybody that went to America without their wife to work never came back. So if we're going, we're going. And then my older sister had saved all this money, and she said, you know what, I'm going as well. And it was funny because when he got here, they're like, you're insane. There's no way you guys are going to be able to survive. My mom and sisters found work before my father did. If that hadn't happened, probably they wouldn't have been able to survive here or stay here as long as they did. But yeah, that was kind of how we ended up in the United States of America. And it took me 6 months to be able to communicate in English, 3 years to learn to read and write it properly. I mean, I still have...
Can you teach Mike?
I still have questionable grammar. I think big words are the easiest for me because they all kind of come from, they're very basic, close to Spanish. So that kind of worked. But, I have probably the grammar of most millennials, so I'm not going to say that.
But I'm sure there were some very difficult times coming here, not knowing the language, foreign place.
It's got to be scary as hell.
Yeah, it's frightening. So I'm interested, is there any one particular piece of suffering that you can pick out that you would consider, say, your greatest suffering?
But to me, when I first came, it wasn't as hard because I was a child. And as kids, you're easier to adapt. I understood that nobody else was like me. But I was already used to that because back home, nobody else was like me because I couldn't communicate properly.
But it's got to be tough because kids are ruthless, too.
They are. So I never took that personally because back home, kids were ruthless to me. So to me, that was something I was very used to at that point in my life, where my siblings, I think, had a harder time. I remember the one time my sister was crying and she didn't want to get out for school. And they're like, what is going on? She's like, no, they're like, calling me a spick. They're calling me this. I don't want to go. But to me, I was so used to tuning that out that I wasn't even aware the spick was about so and she was just crying and she's like, I don't belong here. Nobody wants us here. And there wasn't that many, there wasn't Hispanics in Wayne at the time. So, even if you were in ESL with other kids, you were in kids with China. India.
What year are we talking about here?
I think 1999 or 1999.
99. Because the reason I'm asking that is when I was a kid,
mm-hmm.
Puerto Ricans in this country were looked at very poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And they have since changed to, they're just regular Americans now. But when I was a kid, I was told, they're Puerto Ricans. You stay away from them. They're dirty. That's what I was told as a child.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But that's the only thing you know.
Right.
That's why I said kids are ruthless because.
But it goes to the Irish thing. So the Irish were looked at unfavorably. The Puerto Ricans and the Italians were looked at unfavorably.
So I think for me is that transition here was hard, but it wasn't that hard. To me, the hardest part of being here was in 8th grade when 9/11 happened, because after 9/11, that's when ICE was formed. It became an age of terror for me because it was like you were getting picked on at school because, all the Albanians, Middle Easterns, Indian, Chinese, we were all together in the same little ESL group that grew up together.
The English as a second language.
Yeah, English as a second group. So we all we were friends because we understood, hey, so when after 9/11 happened, people were angry and people didn't care if you were from Costa Rica or the Middle East. It became, you are an immigrant, you have an accent.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like by my freshman year, I did a document saying, why I didn't agree with the war. And I was called a terrorist in my social studies class, and I know what it is to be called a terrorist. I know what it is to, and I stuck with my friends because I'm like, well, no, you were here for me when I didn't speak English. You were here, so I think that to me was the point where I realized and truly understood it doesn't matter what I do. I'm always going to be that immigrant. If I ever do anything wrong, it's not going to matter if I am a citizen, if I am not a citizen. I'm just going to be the illegal immigrant that came from Costa Rica because that's what people are going to go for. They're going to go for that level of anger, because when they're angry, they don't understand, hey, I love the fact that my life changed. Hey, I came to America. Hey, I embrace your culture. They're going to say, hey, you are bad. And at that point, people were so angry. 9/11 was something very traumatic for all of us. I was in school when it happened. I was in 8th grade. So the next 4 years of high school for me were brutal because I didn't just have to worry for, hey, kids think you're a terrorist. I also had to worry about immigration showing up at any point in my life and sending me home. Because at the time after immigration was formed, they used to show up at factories, load people in buses, and you wouldn't hear from them. So once you are in a detention center or you're stopped by immigration, you don't have the same rights because either way, you're not an American. So you wouldn't know. It came to a point where we had a chain of text messages going back and forth, and there was a plan set of, hey, if we find out that this specifically factory got hit and people there, who are the kids of them? Because then you had kids coming home from the school bus and their parents were not home and not knowing where they went. So,
that's true terrorism. What you're experiencing right now is true terrorism, and that's when you know that the terrorists won.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
they did their job because they divided, they separated us, and it caused fear.
No, but it was also like the level of fear that I felt was sorry guys, I usually don't talk about like that part of my life, but
That's a horrible
like,
thing, especially a child.
Yeah, so there was, I know what it is to have the talk of like, hey, if we are deported, this is your game plan. This is the numbers you call. These are the legal documents, because parents started setting up legal documents in case they were not heard from, for somebody else that did have papers could either transport them back to their country or, because what do you do?
It's going to be terrifying.
There were kids that, were left 3 days by themselves at home because there was no way of knowing where their parents were.
Can we get back to the social media question? That was a lot more fun.
Sorry.
But again, getting back to the point where that's what the terrorists wanted to do to this country.
Strike fear in you.
You're right. I had an uncle, and my uncle was prisoner of war in Germany for 27 months. And after he got out of World War II, he re-enlisted and went into Korea. I remember after 9/11 was hit, I sat down with him. He was an old man at this time, and he goes, and I said, "This the world's changing. I don't know, I don't know where we go from here." And he goes, "Listen to me. You can't be afraid, because if you're afraid, the terrorists won." And the problem with the ICE coming in and taking out the factories and things like this, as police officers, the first question when I arrested an adult of somebody of childbearing age, the first question I asked them was, "Is there anybody at home that relies on you for their well-being and to take care of them?" Because that's important to me. Whatever that person did wrong, or whatever reason I'm arresting, it's no fault of the child or an elderly person. So that's an important thing to me. The ICE officers should have been asking those questions, but the people probably were afraid to answer because they didn't want their children to be deported either.
But so I mean, there's been recent cases where there's been Americans born here that were in detention centers for a year because they were saying, "Hey, I'm an American citizen. Please just let me communicate with my family," and they're told no.
Well, that happened during World War II, the Japanese internment camps.
So that's still currently happening. That is a part of my life that's very difficult. And now that I'm a resident of the United States, I think that.
Are you a resident or are you a citizen?
I'm a resident.
Okay.
I got married, which is why I made a lot of the decisions that I did.
Hold on, I got to make a phone call to ICE. No, I'm on.
Well, you can't really send me home, but
Andrew asked me to do that. By the way, he asked me to make that phone call.
He probably didn't think it was gonna be like this. I was gonna be in this mental state, which
good friend of mine is an ICE agent. I was going to bring him up here today just to
and
protection.
listen, I still respond to this day, even though I have papers. I will respond. And I remember at one time I was a waitress and I'm talking to my friend and he's like, "Yeah, ICE is giving this much money. And I'm thinking about joining the force." And literally, without missing a beat, my words to him, I said, "I will never speak to you again." Because to me, and he just kind of looked at me because he's like, "What are you talking about? You have paper, everything." I will never forget the level of terror that, I experienced, or I saw my friends experience at that point. And I'm very, you were saying once we were discussing, you're like, "Oh, well, you're an American." I'm an American till I'm not, because even if I'm a citizen, you can revoke people's citizenships after 9/11. So even if
If they're not born here, yes.
yes. So if you have a citizenship, if they feel that I am a threat or whatever, I will still go back to being an immigrant. So therefore, it does. I'm never really truly American because I was not born here. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I do.
I disagree with you on that one.
But
Because I know people who were born in other countries that are more American than people who were born in
yes,
this
but
country.
it doesn't matter when it comes down to it, because the day that I commit a crime, the day that I do something that moves from that, I could lose everything. And the day that my kids who were born here do something bad, they're not going to say, Jalen the American. They're going to say Jalen the daughter of an illegal immigrant. Because that's the first thing that comes up is what's your background at that point. And so I have, when you're saying, well, you have to teach your kids they're American, they are. But that part of them that was not born here, which is 50% mine, will affect their lives whether I like it or not, because they will be judged by that.
Well, Kev, you say it all the time. We're all judged by our lowest common denominator.
Correct.
Being an illegal immigrant, you could be the most upstanding citizen, upstanding person in the world. Working and giving back to the community and everything.
You get robbed by one Costa Rican, it all changes.
It all changes.
Seriously.
Yep, exactly. Yep, without doubt.
Like if the biggest drug dealer in the world was Costa Rican, all of a sudden, every Costa Rican I come across, I'm going to look at sideways.
But even like my brother growing up, he came here when he was 5, 6, I can't remember. His best friend became a cop in Florida. And they were close, His best friend got shot in the head during a chasing somebody. And the first thing the news picked up on was he was shot by an illegal Jamaican or something like that, something along those lines. And they were using his death as something that, against immigrants. And to me, that was hurtful, not because I am an immigrant. It was hurtful because this kid, when gay marriage became legal, literally said to my brother, I will marry you, because he understood the struggle that my brother was going through. So to use somebody's death for something like that, and then I had my brother watching this, and he was just like,
well, what people don't realize is America is in your heart, okay? It's an ideal. It's an ideal of freedom and opportunity. It's not always the reality, but when people come into this country, and this is the without getting too much into the immigration debate, when people come into this country and they have America in their heart, and they have those opportunity ideals and the freedoms in their heart, every true American, like I said, loves that, because at one point their ancestors were the same, from the Pilgrims on down.
Not just that too. I remember at one point there was a string of robberies in Wayne, and we knew
it was Costa Ricans.
It was a Costa Rican. and do you want to know what the small group of Costa Ricans said? Call the police right up and said, hey, here's a tip. Is this guy? Why? Because we don't want, especially when you're here undocumented, you don't want attention to you.
Yeah, you don't want the heat on you.
You don't want the heat on you, and you don't want the heat around your people in general. So you're going to call the police, and whoever is doing something wrong, we will be the first to report it, because you don't want to, you don't want an investigation. You don't want cops hanging around, and you don't want those people trying to figure out, hey, who's renting here? How many people live in this apartment? So guess what? We're going to get rid of whoever's causing the issue right away. So call the police. The guy was arrested.
That's the whole idea behind the Italian mafia. Mm-hmm. So the Italian mafia was started to police their own neighborhoods, not to bring outsiders in, for the main reason.
So I got to start Costa Rican mafia?
Pretty much. Well, for the main reason that they didn't want a pockmark on the Italian name, so they handled it internally. Turns out the mafia did just that. But initially, that's why the mafia was started, to protect those who couldn't go to the police or something like that. So those difficulties you went through in dealing with that discrimination, and that's crazy discrimination. I still don't understand that. Like I can see, because I know during 9/11, I can see a lot of Indian immigrants and people from Middle East, they were mistaken all the time. As a matter of fact, so much so that I remember Indian-owned businesses would put up Indian American-owned business, because people were breaking in there because people were scared. People didn't know what was going on.
We had gas stations that were owned by Indians in town. And right after 9/11, people were going in and harassing all the
Crazy.
Indians. It was unbelievable.
That's an ignorance thing.
Yeah, it's ignorance.
And I don't. So you see, I don't judge an American based on that, because I know that it's about.
But you judged Ace on it. See, you
Who?
can fall into that trap.
Who did I judge?
Not Ace. You judged Ice.
So I judge Ice.
So you fall into that trap too.
It doesn't matter because that to me, and I'm gonna explain it why. A lot of the kids that had either illegal parents or were themselves undocumented in the United States, we develop PTSD, right? So to me, that's a trauma response that I cannot control. And it's not that I don't want to.
But if you lost somebody, and just to put it in the relation, I'm not saying your reaction is bad. I'm not saying.
I mean, it's not good.
But we all fall into that same trap. For instance, if I had a family member, say my father or my brother was lost in 9/11, do you think it's going to be very easy for me to forgive anybody from the Middle East because I'm going to implant their face on one of those people flying those planes, even though they had nothing to do with it?
No, and so I understand that. And you got to remember, they lived in Wayne. The guys that flew the plane, the
Muhammad
plane.
Atta, I think.
Were they Costa Rican?
No, but they lived in the Wayne apartments on Route 23. They trained, I believe, in one of the airports nearby.
In Teterboro and
was it Morristown?
Fairfield.
Yeah.
Fairfield.
So we had more heat than probably most people did because it was like, well, how do we know that's not your cousin, and how do we know that's not your uncle? Because they literally lived in Wayne. So Wayne overall became very rough to live in at that point in my life. Now, the trauma responses I have to these things are things that I've worked on. But to this day, if you tell me, let's go to Texas, I will not go to Texas. Because to me, I am aware that
they're going to throw you back over the Rio Grande? What's going on?
If you are within 100 miles of, of like a border, immigration has more power there than in any other state. For me, I am aware that certain states can cause more dangers to me. My brain, and I'm not saying this is right.
But they're trauma responses. Like
and anybody, from Texas, I do apologize. But I know in my brain, it's like Texas, bad. Anywhere near the border, bad. When I travel, I probably travel with copies of my Social Security, my documents. I have a Costa Rican passport, my marriage certificate, every single document you could think of. Because and my husband has a copy of them. Because God forbid.
But you have
she
to
gets pulled over. It's license, registration, insurance, visa.
Passport.
No,
passport.
And you know what's funny? A cop can pull me over and I don't give an F, okay? I've yelled at a cop. The one time I got stopped, the guy was asking me to parallel park. I clearly...
Not a smart move. Just so I'm going to give you some advice. Not a smart move.
Wasn't in Roseland, was it?
No. I got stopped once, and it was my registration my inspection was expired. But where they had the block was such a weird place. It was almost like a round thing. He was asking me to parallel park, and he's like kind of going like this. And he goes, "What?" I said, "You're asking me to parallel park. I'm having an allergic reaction. Do you see my eyes? They're swollen. I still was forced to come into work, and you want me to parallel park right now? And I'm late. I can't do this right now." And the guy just goes, "Ma'am, have a good day." So
sometimes the ticket isn't worth the bullshit.
Well, so when I came across that, I'm sure this has happened to you. You pull over somebody and they're trying to get out of the ticket. I really got to go to the bathroom. I said 1 or 2. I would always say 1 or 2. I want to know.
No, but I really was having an allergic reaction. My eyes were swollen, almost shut, and I'm like, I really.
Here's my test on that one. Here would be my test on that. I'm like, all right, let me just write down your license number. Give me 1 second. Let me write down, and I'll mail you the ticket. And if those people said, because it was always I gotta go poop.
Yeah.
All right. So I would write down their license number, and they said if I handed their license back, okay, fine, and then they take off. I know they really got to go to the bathroom. Guess what? They don't get a ticket. But if that person sat there and argued with me, I'm like, well, I thought you said you had to go to the bathroom and it was an emergent situation. So
listen, 80% of the time, I have no idea where the papers in my car are at all, but I know where my passport is.
So
I
that's
know where
universal. That's universal between all countries with women.
Yeah. I think it's a Costa Rican thing.
I got stuff at the cop was I ate a red light, and but it was one of those like you cannot do red on
red.
Right, yeah, whatever. And I had to do, but
4-1.
And and at the time I was working I'm a medical statistician. I was working at opening two spas at the time, so I had paperwork upon paperwork on my seat. And he's like, "Ma'am, do you?" And I'm like looking, and I'm like, "I don't know where it is, dude. Just give me a ticket. I don't care. I haven't slept in a week. I really mentally cannot prepare for this right now, and I don't care." He was just like, man, it sounds like you need wine. I said, yeah, but then you will stop me for drinking. So you know what? He's like, ma'am, just go. Just go. So I don't know if it's because I make them laugh, but normally, I do have a very close relationship to cops. Even when I used to waitress, waitress like 5 to 6 in the morning, and all the cops used to come in, and you make them you already know they're coming in at 2:30 in the morning. You
Spitting their coffee?
No,
Yeah, of course you did. Just maybe once.
No, but I did spill soup on a guy's crush once. And it was terrible because it was matzo soup. And then I worked at a diner.
What did he do? Order hard-boiled eggs?
Oh my God, it was the worst experience ever. No, so it was matzo soup. We had just changed the bowls that they came in. So I'm walking, I put the matzo soup down on his thing, and the soup just goes right to his crotch.
Oh.
And my reaction to it was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like patting this man's.
It was.
Yeah, right.
And she got a good tip that night.
No, and the poor guy is just like, it's okay. And I'm like, no, because it's hot.
I waited tables all through college, and I have spilled a couple things on people.
And the automatic response is to like help, especially because it's something
not when
hot.
it's a guy.
But no,
Sir, you're on your own on this one. Sorry.
Ma'am, let me help you out.
And the poor guy was just sitting there, and all the other cops, because you guys are a-holes, no offense, are just dying, and the guy's face
Surprised they
is
weren't
red.
taking pictures.
I'm not even aware of like why what I'm doing is wrong, because I just feel like, oh my God, like
Did he put his hands behind his head?
No, he was just kind of like, he was like trying to push me away, like it's okay, ma'am, it's okay. And I was like, and I saw these guys every night, so now I'm.
The next time you saw him, did he actually dump soup on his own crotch?
This man never ordered soup again. I think I didn't see him for and everybody always came to the same diner for lunch. That's kind of like the cop thing, right? I didn't see him for at least 2 weeks. I don't know if he was so traumatized he had to take him off or what.
He was icing his privates. That's what he was doing.
But
Next time he came in, she dropped a hot dog in his lap.
No, and
he
he was a handsome guy too. And years later, I got stopped before my wedding.
Oh, so what you're saying, if he was an ugly guy, you wouldn't have helped to clean him.
No.
Andrew, you and I need to talk.
Listen to this. This man, and this is how traumatic it was for him, right? Because I got stopped in my friend's car the day before my wedding because she didn't have a registration. Of course, I lowered the window. The car had been in the sun all day. It smells like weed. There's no other way. I don't smoke weed, but I was driving her car back to her house, right?
It's a Costa Rican thing.
The cop comes. No. The cop comes in, and I'm trying now. I am triggered and I am nervous, so I'm speaking really fast English with an accent. So the guy is just like, I don't even know. So he calls for backup because Andrew leaves. He happened in front of the apartment. Andrew decides that, hey, I'm the son of a cop. Let me go talk to him. She's clearly nervous. Now he just sees a Hispanic male coming his way and with his cousin. So he calls for backup. The cop that shows up is the guy with the soup. He's like,
no, this one's okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, Kattia. And I'm like, so now I'm doing the explanation in 2 seconds, and he's just like laughing. He's like, it's okay. Calm down. But it was just so funny because in his face, I could see I know her. She spilled soup on me. And you know what? That really de-escalated the situation.
Buddy, John, it's okay. You can let her go. She's touched my crotch.
She rubbed my crotch once before.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah, it's good.
That's not the worst thing. Okay, so Hispanic women, and you guys don't know this, we do this thing that's called a Cinderella, right?
Boy.
So we put a cast around whatever area you're trying to shrink, and you will dehydrate it for 24 hours so you're smaller. The moment you get wet, though, it expands, okay? So...
Dehydrate what?
Like, if my stomach, it will, shrink the area, literally.
This was right before her wedding. So
it was the day before my wedding.
Oh, that's what you did when you were laying down around your stuff.
And so they have to, right? So they're searching the car now because the car smells like marijuana. I'm perfectly fine. I don't care. It's not my car, right? They start patting me down, and I'm wearing a cast. And all you see is, white powder. And the guy's like, what is that? And I'm like, so now I have to explain, I'm wearing almost full body cast, my stomach, my arms, and there's white powder coming off.
Well, so that's actually a good point. And Mike, let me take you to the other side of that. Although it was very funny for you, it was equally as funny for the cop, because there have been times when I've been patting people down as a police officer, and I come across something. One of the times, the guy, he had some gifts. Okay, I'm trying to see if he's got a gun up his leg or something.
He had a bigger gun than most men.
And it's down his leg. And I'm like, what is this? What do you got right here? And he goes, it's me. And I'm like, no. There's no way. I mean, we're talking like halfway down the thigh. There's no way unless you just came from a strip club or something, because there's just no way it's happening. It was him. Or there's another time
Well, how do you go about it? Do you make him show you? How do you guys like?
That's one of those I take on faith.
Yeah, exactly. I'll
took that on
take your
faith.
word for it.
Because it wasn't a gun. It wasn't it wasn't like metal.
I mean, as a
After you rubbed it for 10 minutes, it became metal.
well,
Threw up on me.
Wouldn't it like respond to touch?
Not from
Not
a guy.
that it has a life of its own, right?
Not from a guy. But
Listen, if a cop is patting you down and feels that, you're not going to respond to it. But if, say, a waitress spills something on your crotch and starts rubbing it, then you may respond to it.
I've been patting down guys where they like by their belt was they have man boobs, you know, and you're like, oh my god, and then see the minute I guarantee they got back to the station and they were talking all about that, about your incident.
Oh yeah,
because
you were the talk of the town for a week.
You know,
will you ever go back to Costa Rica?
I go on a regular basis. Like that's my retirement plan. And it's not that I don't love America. It's that I am aware that I won't be able to afford to retire in America. Years ago, I bought a house over there, and we go every so often. I like my kids to see it. It's a very beautiful country. I like my kids to kind of experience nature the way I did as a child, walk around, barefooted and see the jungle and
without
things
plumbing.
Like that.
You want them to experience
we have plumbing.
Outhouses.
Well, listen, and even I have using outhouse, okay?
I use
okay,
one
Mike. Have you, Mike?
I've used
I
one.
worked in construction. I
use
used to go
one every
Porta
day.
Johns all
No,
the
that's
time.
a portal. Have you
Porta
using outhouse?
No.
Yes.
Where a snake can climb up and get you, because that's where they like to hang out.
Yes.
Where?
So I'm from South Jersey. Okay, my uncle.
That's almost Costa Rica.
So my uncle lived west of Atlantic City area, and they had a farm, right? So on that farm, which was in the family for a very long time, there was a wooden outhouse with a moon on the door, and that was they call them privies. That was the outhouse. I have gone in a true outhouse.
Have you used leaves to wipe your butt?
Plenty of times, because I don't always get into the bathroom. So you go where you got to go. If you got to go bad enough, you'll go wherever you got to go. You just got to watch. You got to know the difference between poison ivy.
But
listen, Costa Ricans got it easy because they got those big tropical leaves. So stop it.
I was just going to say, it's funny you brought up poison ivy. We had a party one time. A friend of mine owned a cabin in Lincoln Park. We had a big party up there. Guy had to go to the bathroom. He went, took a shit, and wiped himself with poison ivy.
Oh God.
That's painful.
So you said that you are a resident. Do you have any plans of becoming a citizen?
So the reason why I'm currently a resident is for the election, I was like, I'm going to vote. So I took out my residency card to apply for my citizenship. And I don't know what happened to it, but it disappeared. I wasn't meant to vote that election. So I had to buy, I had to order a new residency card. And when they gave it to me, it was for 25 years. Now, if you've never applied for legal documents, a residency card, at the time, it was $500 just to get a new one replaced. Now I think it's about $700 and something. So when I got that, I said, I just spent $500 on this. I'm just going to wait till I legally change, because my name right now is which is terrible. My name right now is that of my first marriage. And the reason why I haven't changed is because then I have to change all my legal documents. So I was like, I'll just wait till my citizenship and I'll just change everything to my new last name of my new husband. And then when I get married again, then I'll do it all over again. I like to change my name every 7 years or so. So it was so much money for us, at the time, that it's funny because my husband said, oh, just order it. And I said, okay, honey. And then he called me. He's like, we've been robbed. Somebody just charged $500 into our account. And I said, honey, that's me. That's my residency card. He's like, what do you mean? I thought it was a driver's license. I was like, no, because they have to do fingerprints. They have to run my fingerprints through all the world criminals and whatever, which I passed. But I always get nervous when they're going to scan me.
You fold them.
Yeah,
I always get very nervous because I'm like, what if somebody has the same thing? It makes no sense, but that's just...
Fingerprints and snowflakes,
It is.
right?
It's very terrible.
So what's your maiden name? Guzman? Is your uncle El Chapo
My
in jail?
My maiden name is Kattia Lucia Fernandez Torres.
All right,
She just took every prototypical Spanish last name and threw it
I'm
in there.
thinking that's bullshit.
My name is Kattia Lucia Fernandez Torres, because in Costa Rica you use both your father's last name and your mom's last name and your middle name.
So are you gonna hyphenate your name when you do finally change it?
No, I'm just gonna be a Santiago.
You sound real thrilled about that.
I'm super excited. I just think my name sounds cool, like Kattia Roman.
Fernandez Torres Roman Santiago.
Well, when I yell at my kids, I'm like, Jalen Elizabeth Roman Fernandez Torres. And she's like,
oh, because
no.
in American mothers will always use your middle name when you're in true trouble.
Yeah. And then, but I throw in the Torres, and she's like, don't say Torres, because really in Costa Rica we wouldn't use the Torres, but yeah. So over there you use all four names.
But when you go over there, how are you received?
So I am the American cousin, which is hilarious because here I am the
Here you're the Costa Rican immigrant.
Costa Rican
You go
immigrant,
there
and back home I am the American cousin. And it's interesting.
Which is an interesting dynamic because if I moved down to Costa Rica,
you'd be like a papi chulo, and all the girls would be like, "You got papers? Let me marry you.
Okay,
you have a great time."
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
that. An American citizen lands in Costa Rica, and there's an alarm that goes off.
How big is your house in Costa Rica? You got room for me and Kevin? We can listen. We'll go down and do a podcast.
Okay, live show.
Put a mic.
But I like it because
put a microphone in front of us in Costa Rica.
We're going.
A lot of wives, because I do medical aesthetics, and they're like, "Yeah, my husband likes to go deep sea fishing in Costa Rica," and I'm like, "Yep, I'm sure he's fishing, all right."
Yeah.
But I leave it there. I don't say anything else. I just said, "I'm sure he does."
I have a couple friends of mine who actually go over there and go surfing.
Do they go?
In Costa Rica.
Deep sea fishing as well.
No, they go surfing, but I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what they call it, surfing with the air quotes.
And you guys can't see it, but we're really doing air quotes. Like this entire episode has just been air quotes.
That's funny because if I went down there, no matter how, if I stayed down in Costa Rica for 20 years,
you'd be a gringo.
I'll be a gringo. Right, I know all the Spanish terminology.
Which I did not know that was an offensive term.
It's not to me.
I used to call my ESL teacher gringa, and she used to always look at me. And it wasn't until later on they're like, no,
Well, it is a Boricua for Puerto Rica.
Puerto Rican.
There's Catracho that's Honduran, and there's Chapín, which is Guatemalan. Like that's the.
Well, I'm Atica.
Atica.
Yeah.
So that there's different terminologies for every different Spanish culture.
Do you know why they call us ticos?
Why?
So we add chiquito at the end of everything. We're like pequeñito, muy bonito. So we just add ito everywhere. So that's why they started calling us ticos.
Ticos?
Mm-hmm.
That one I didn't. You're tica. Your opportunities down there. You've seen this. You've seen Costa Rica as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've been in America for 24 years, did you say? Was that
Yeah, because I'm going to be 35, so 21 years.
What are the difference in the opportunities from here to there?
It's different. Back home is very different than what it was when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, it was, clearly like my father's trauma was like, hey, I have all these daughters I'm going to have to marry off to like decent guys. So at the time it was all about who you were going to be married, and you were raised to be a housewife. You were raised to be, a wife in general. Which is funny because then my cousins from my generation, really, most of them ended up being nurses, lawyers, doctors, because...
Over there?
Yeah. The difference is, I think, education. We don't have an army, so education is very important. So you're giving, even if you are in elementary school, you're giving grants to help with like the uniform and things like that. So over there, the first 4 years of college are free. And then when you're ready to specialize, you would then start paying for school. You have to always, you do have to have good grades and pass certain tests to get into them, but you have a lot more help when it comes to education, so you won't have crazy student debt.
That's what we need in this country.
Yeah, so that was very, but I didn't think at that point in my life it was something that was possible because, I couldn't communicate, I couldn't speak properly. Once I was in school, they had good grades. But that wasn't even in my radar till I came to the United States, where I was like, oh, there's lawyers and there's doctors and look at all these nurses. And they teach you, hey, you can be anything you want to be. And you grow up with that belief or that system of you can be till that point as a child that really impacts you because you're like, wow, I can be anything. So that really made a big difference. I think also it was more liberating here. Like women had more opportunities, or what thought that had more opportunities at that point. If you go back home now, you would see that.
But that comes from believing in yourself. So you believe in yourself, you can do anything.
I was going to say that in Costa Rica, how are women treated?
Where I was from is very different than the capital. So I was from a very small town, one payphone in the whole town, one food store kind of thing. It wasn't a big population. So there it was very it's a very Catholic country. It's very religious. So, women, we stay at home. We take care of the kids, the husband works.
You're selling Costa Rica to me
but
in a great way.
No, but it's not like that anymore. But you know, I mean, women do work in the coffee farms. Like my mom was 8 months pregnant with at the coffee farm 12 hours a day under the rain or something. It didn't matter. But she did have what we call a I forgot the word, guys. I'm a terrible Costa Rican.
Stay here long enough.
Canasto, right? So you tie it around your stomach and
to hold it.
Yeah, to hold the coffee.
Like a sash. Yeah.
No, it's big. It's made out of like
I know what
wood,
you're talking about.
And then you would tie it around, and then that's where you put the coffee. So she'll have her belly, and then.
And she was pregnant wearing that canasta.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was pregnant 10 years straight. So no, I'm not even kidding. She really was.
Sounds like your parents had a hobby.
It sounds like my parents didn't have cable, really. But also at that time, which is not that long ago, you know, the Catholic Church had a lot of power, so they didn't believe in birth control. So if you as a woman were not pregnant within a year or two of giving birth, you were looked upon like you were...
Actually, that was a legal reason for divorce.
Yeah.
If a long time ago, it was a legal reason that a man could divorce a woman and still stay within the Catholic Church was if she couldn't bear him children.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, men could just say that their wife was hysterical and they could just lock us up. So
well, you know what the Latin hyster is Latin for uterus?
Yeah.
All right. And hysterical in women was commonly known as a wandering uterus. That's what doctors thought, that the uterus was going all throughout their body. So, Kattia, we're coming to the end of this thing right now. Mm-hmm. And I ask all of our guests the same question. You've gone through different struggles being an immigrant, coming into this country brand new. What has the suffering of immigration or being an immigrant taught you?
I think growing up and going through all the experiences that went, whether they were traumatic or, you know, happy ones, because for every bad thing that happened to me growing up here as an immigrant, I think there was always somebody kind. There was always people helping. There was always, you know, somebody supporting me through it. There was for every bad situation, I always had somebody there that was either maybe somebody I just met that smiled when I was ready to, you know, jump off a bridge or whatever. There was always beauty. And I think when you learn to view your suffering as beauty, it really changes your whole outlook on life. Because yes, things are really bad. And yes, it hurts. And yes, you know, you're going to still get triggered by your traumas and the things that happen to you. But every time that I am triggered, every time that things are happening, I can turn around and say, hey, I survived that. Yes, I am triggered right now because you said the word Texas, but I survived that mental, you know, like I was able to survive that and that made me stronger. The other thing is I've met many people that either never knew about immigration and I was able to explain to them all the things I had to do. And they're like, oh, I never knew that, because it's easy. If you never had to experience it, you don't know, right?
We speak to people all the time about PTS. A lot of people don't have any basis or real world experience on that stuff. Just like when we bring people in here that we have absolutely zero perspective on, we internalize that perspective. We learn from that perspective.
I had no idea about all this immigration stuff. You know, I'm like you said, we learn every day.
Well, even like, and I was telling my husband, and you know, when kids start to be separated from their parents at the border, that was a very mentally exhausting for me, and it was such a pain because I could imagine my little girl being separated from me. And I said, you know, people don't get it because they don't have to put themselves in that shoes. This is a Spanish issue. And right now the issue they're having is, you know, Ukrainians are at the Mexican border. So now people are like, oh, wait, what's happening? Why? Because now this is something you're more aware of. And sometimes things happen to, you know, bring light to things. And, you know, just like I was, now you're going to see, you know, Ukrainians coming to the United States and Mexican border and asking for asylum, which is something you are legally allowed to do.
Correct.
Right? So up to now, those are things that people are like, they're just coming to our border. No, you can legally come to a border and ask for asylum. That's something that it's law, you know, but a lot of people were not viewing it that way, right? Because it wasn't their struggle, or maybe they just chose to see us, you know, immigrants. But so I think that I don't even know why I went to this tangent. I do apologize if I'm triggering anybody. I just think that there is beauty in that to me, because I know that as an immigrant, if I can help a Ukrainian, or if I could help somebody that's currently lost everything, that had to come miles and ask for asylum, this is something I'm willing to do. And you'll see many Americans have beautiful open hearts, and they will do anything because they say, well, that could be my child. But it's not till it happens to somebody like you where you're like, wow, this is...
It's usually how people are.
Yeah, it just is. And I don't blame them for it. Right. I don't. right? So what I'm saying is, just Americans in general, and this is something that as immigrants we could all say, are very generous people. They want to help. They will give you what they have if they can. It's not, a lot of people like to see them so, but they're not. This is something we have charities that other countries don't have. Why? Because we want to help. A lot of the immigrant story is we know what you went through, so we want to help you. Now, there is also immigrants that will say, well, I got here, never mind.
Well, they pull the ladder.
They pull the ladder, which is something that I've made a point in my life not to do, because I've seen people that were...
I'm here. I made it.
I've seen people...
See you later.
See you later.
That,
Exactly.
that were undocumented next to me, talking bad about immigrants. And I'm like, well,
Well, I always say that. So the people in the future that are going to become the most patriotic are the people who came here and adopted America, that ideal of America. They're going to be the people in the future who are the most patriotic.
And the funny thing is,
because they had to fight for this country.
Those people who did fight and love this country and the immigrants that came here, the one thing that I see in all of them, resiliency.
Of course.
Because they fought for what they wanted.
And they
never
appreciate it.
stopped. And they appreciate it.
They suffered.
Exactly.
And we didn't have a choice. And I think that's everybody, right? Because there's this quote I like to say, it's like, if you are already in hell, if you're already going through the worst thing possible that you think, and you feel like you truly are in hell, why stop there? Why would you want to stop in hell?
That's one quote I brought up on here. If you're going through hell, keep going.
Keep going, because guess what? Once you already hit the ground and you hit your lowest part of yourself, which is you can only build yourself up. Yep. And that's something that I think every immigrant, something that even the kids that they were the first college generations, right? All those kids that had to not just carry their dream, but the dream of a family, because you're not carrying me being a professional today. It's not necessarily, hey, I really wanted to go to school. It was like my parents said, we were not able to. So you are. My daughter will carry on the same weight and the same responsibility of, hey, how much farther can I get because my mom was able to get this far?
Don't fall in the trap of children of immigrants. And I've seen this firsthand.
We're very traumatized.
The trap of children of immigrants. So their parents want them to do better and not have to go out and work and everything. So you see a generation of kids going to college and they become very soft. So one of the quotes that I stick with, and I've said many times, is hard people create good times. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times.
And that's why it's also important. Like sometimes, and I know it's like, you guys need to just be American now. But still talk to your kids about the struggle, because I've spoken to people that are from Italy, Irish, and they're telling me the stories of their grandparents. And as an immigrant, I wish I had heard those stories. Because when I was growing up, I just looked at Italians and said, well, you're like me. Why aren't you helping?
We were all immigrants in this country.
And those are things that you want your people to know, so that if they ever come across somebody that needs that help, they can say, hey, you know what? Somebody help me. So help them and use your pain for goodness. It can be used for goodness. And I think learning from all of that, it's important. Just learning from the pain.
Okay, with that, I think that's what our podcast is all about. We went through something that's tough, and we're reaching out to people.
But talking about our pain is good, because we're taught, hey, don't talk about it. But then there may be somebody that has PTS that is not even aware of it.
I recently heard a quote, and I'm going to end this show with this quote. It's, we impress people with our successes, but we connect to people with our weaknesses. Kattia, thank you so much for coming in today and talk about the suffering of an immigrant.
Thank you for having me down, guys. I really appreciate it. And,
Mike, we're heading to Costa Rica.
Yeah, without doubt.
You guys are going to go deep sea fishing, and I'm saying this once again with air quotes, guys.
And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of an Immigrant with Kattia Roman. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned today. Kattia was her father's fifth disappointment, and they had no cable. I am going to be a papi chulo in Costa Rica.
With papeles. You got to make sure you let them know you have papers.
We must all learn to embrace your home culture. Discrimination stems from fear and ignorance. If you're going through hell, keep going. But most importantly, believe in yourself and you can do anything. And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of an Immigrant. Find Mike on Instagram at dented_ace. Find me at Realkevindonaldson. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and now on YouTube. And that's going to do it for this episode. We will see you all next time.